You're not reacting to reality, you're reacting to memory. That anxiety, that anger, that spiral you feel, it's not caused by what's happening right now. It's caused by how your mind interprets what's happening. You don't see the world as it is. You see it through a lens, shaped by your past, your fears, your wounds, your expectations. Most people live their entire lives without ever questioning that lens. They react, they assume, they suffer, not because of reality, but because of perception. The Stoics understood this. If you want real control over your emotions, your decisions, your life, you must first master your perception. That's what this video is about. Learning how to see clearly, to stop reacting blindly, and to take back ownership of how your mind sees the world. If that's something you want, subscribe now. This channel is here to help you sharpen your perception, strengthen your inner world, and build unshakable clarity. Let's start with a strange, almost unbelievable story. The story of Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks, one of the most well-known neurologists of the 20th century. A brilliant mind. He spent decades studying how the human brain works, how it processes memory, language, identity. And yet he couldn't recognize his own reflection in the mirror. Literally, he had a condition called prosopagnosia, face blindness. His vision was perfect. He could see a chair, a tree, a book, no problem. But when it came to human faces, they blurred into meaninglessness. Even people he loved, people he saw every day, they were strangers to him visually. The issue wasn't physical. It wasn't his eyes that were failing. It was his brain's interpretation of what he was seeing, a glitch in perception. And this is where it gets relevant for the rest of us. Because even if you don't have face blindness, you still have blind spots. We all do. For example, let's say your friend doesn't respond to your message for a few hours. Your mind might perceive that as rejection. Maybe they're mad at me. Maybe I said something wrong. But in reality, they're just stuck in traffic, or taking a nap. Or imagine getting critical feedback at work. One person hears it and grows from it. Another hears it and takes it as a personal attack. Same event, totally different experience. Why? Because perception shapes reality. Let's explore something the Stoics believe deeply. We are disturbed not by events, but by the view we take of them. Epictetus. At first glance, that quote might sound philosophical, even abstract. But if you really sit with it, it has the power to change your life. Because what Epictetus is saying is simple. Your emotional chaos, your anxiety, your anger, your stress, it's not caused by what happens to you. It's caused by how you interpret what happens. Let's break that down. You don't get angry because someone interrupted you. You get angry because your mind instantly judged it as disrespectful, as a threat, as an attack on your worth. But that interpretation, that's not a fact. It's a filter. You applied meaning, you attached emotion, and then your ego stepped in to make it feel personal. This is what Stoicism teaches us to challenge. It doesn't say never feel. It says pause. Notice what's happening inside you. And ask yourself a powerful question. Is this emotion based on objective truth or on my perception of the truth? And most of the time, it's perception. Here's a real-world example. Let's say you walk into a room and your friends suddenly go quiet. Your mind might jump to, they were talking about me. They don't want me here. I'm being excluded. But in reality, maybe they were just planning a surprise, or maybe the conversation ended naturally, or maybe it had nothing to do with you at all. You see the difference? The event is neutral. It's your judgment of the event that creates emotional turbulence. That's why Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress your emotions. It invites you to understand them, to become aware of the judgments that spark them. And in that awareness is your power. Now let's go deeper into how perception is actually formed. You might be wondering, if I'm misinterpreting things all the time, why? Where does that even come from? And the answer lies in how your brain works. Your brain doesn't give you a raw, unfiltered feed of reality. It gives you a version shaped by your past, your wounds, your beliefs, and your expectations. Think of it like this. You're not living in the world. You're living in a story your mind is constantly telling you about the world. And often that story is outdated. Let's look at some examples. Someone pulls away in a relationship. You instantly feel abandoned, but it's not the distance that hurts. It's the memory it triggers. Maybe it reminds you of when you were left behind as a kid or ghosted in the past. A message goes unread. A whole day goes by. You start spiraling. But the truth is, they just forgot to reply. Your brain, though, tells a different story. They don't care. I'm not important. You speak up in a meeting and no one reacts. You go quiet and think, I said something stupid. But in reality, everyone might have just been thinking or distracted or waiting for someone else to respond. These moments feel real. The emotion feels true, but that doesn't make the story accurate. Because what you're reacting to is not the situation. You're reacting to what it reminds you of. That's the trap, and it's incredibly common. But here's the good news. Once you become aware of these patterns, once you see the filters, you can start to update them. You can pause and say, okay, I'm feeling rejected, but is that really what's happening right now? Am I responding to this person or to something from my past? That simple awareness is everything, because it shifts you from being on autopilot to being awake, from reacting to choosing. Think back to Oliver Sacks. His brain filtered out faces, but the rest of us, we filter meaning, emotion, and memory, and mistake that for truth. In a world like ours, those filters are even harder to notice. The ancient Stoics lived in a world of slow communication, handwritten letters, and natural silence. Today, we live in the opposite. Our minds are constantly under siege. Notifications, social media, group chats, red dots, pings, likes, swipes. Every second, your attention is being hijacked, not by what matters, but by what's loud. And here's the dangerous part. It doesn't just distract you, it reshapes your perception. You start to expect instant gratification. An immediate reply means you're loved. No reply, panic, rejection, anxiety. You begin to confuse silence with disconnection. You think slow responses mean you're not valued, not because it's true, but because your brain has been rewired to need constant feedback. And that feedback loop, it creates emotional fragility. You post something online, no likes for 10 minutes. Your mind whispers, maybe it wasn't good enough. You see someone else's highlight reel and think, why isn't my life like that? This is the modern mind trap. You're not just experiencing reality, you're experiencing a distorted, dopamine-fueled version of it. But the Stoic, he doesn't demand constant reassurance. He doesn't beg for the world to respond the way he wants. He observes, he accepts, and when necessary, he adjusts. He trains his mind to see clearly, not through the lens of craving, ego, or fear, but through clarity and self-control. That's not passive, that's power. Let's pause for a second. Take a breath. All of this philosophy, it only matters if it shows up in real life. So let's make it real. Let's bring this down to street level. Here's what Stoicism looks like in everyday life. Because Stoicism isn't just philosophy, it's practice. And it shows up in the small, everyday moments that shape your emotional life. Example 1. A friend stops reaching out. Untrained mind. They don't care about me. I must have done something wrong. You spiral. You assume the worst. You feel rejected. Trained mind. Let me check the facts. They've been quieter lately. Could they be stressed? Busy? Maybe the dynamic is shifting. And that's okay. You approach it with curiosity, not judgment. Why it matters. You don't fill silence with your fears. You wait, observe, and respond based on reality, not insecurity. Example 2. You fail at something, you launch a project. It flops. You go for a promotion, get rejected. You try something new, and it doesn't work. Untrained mind. I'm not good enough. I'm just not cut out for this. Trained mind. This is feedback, not a verdict. What can I learn? Where did it go wrong? And what can I try next? Why it matters. Failure becomes information, not identity. Example 3. Someone criticizes you. Someone makes a comment about your work, your personality, your choices. Untrained mind. They're attacking me. They're out to hurt me. Trained mind. Pause. Is there any truth in what they said? Or are they projecting their own issues? Either way, I don't have to take it personally. Why it matters. You build emotional armor, not by hardening, but by filtering. The Stoic builds space between what happens and how he responds. And in that space, he finds peace, not because life is perfect, but because his perception is clear. That space, it's your superpower. And with practice, you can expand it. Theory is useless without practice. So here's a simple mental framework you can use right now. The 3-step Stoic Check. Every time you feel a surge of emotion, frustration, anxiety, anger, pause and walk yourself through the Stoic Check. Step 1. What actually happened? Not what you think happened, not how it made you feel, just facts. Raw, objective reality. Example. My friend didn't text me back for 2 days. That's it. No story, no assumptions. Step 2. What am I telling myself about it? This is where the mind kicks in. This means they don't care. They're pulling away. They're mad at me. Catch the narrative. Ask, is this truth or fear? Is this a memory being replayed or the moment I'm actually in? Step 3. What would a calm, rational observer say? Step outside of yourself. Imagine someone who isn't emotionally involved. What would they say? They might say, your friend is probably just busy. Let's wait before drawing conclusions. Or even, maybe it's time to check in, not with panic, but with compassion. That 3rd step, that's where clarity lives. That's where your power begins. Because here's the truth. You don't need to eliminate emotion. You don't need to become a robot. But you do need to lead your emotions, not follow them blindly. Stoicism isn't suppression, it's command. A quiet kind of strength that lets you feel fully, without being ruled by those feelings. Let's zoom out for a second. Because modern neuroscience actually backs all of this. And the science? It's simple. Your brain is not showing you the whole picture. In fact, it filters out more than 99% of the sensory input it receives. It's not built to give you objective truth. It's built to give you what it thinks is relevant, based on your past, your experiences, your fears, your expectations. And that's not a flaw. It's efficiency. It's how we survive. But it's also how we get stuck. Because unless you check those filters, your mind will keep showing you fear when there is none, threat where there's just uncertainty, rejection where there's simply silence, unchecked. This leads to overthinking, paranoia, anxiety, disconnection. You start fighting ghosts instead of seeing clearly. That's why your job isn't to be perfect. It's to slow things down, to build distance between stimulus and response, to see the fog before you charge into it, to become the kind of person who doesn't just survive chaos, but walks through it, calm, precise, and untouchable. That's how a Stoic moves. Let's end with something simple, but powerful. The world will never quiet down for you. There will always be noise. People will speak carelessly. Plans will fall apart. Change will come, whether you're ready or not. But your mind, that's your domain, your clarity, your calm under pressure. Your ability to stay rooted when everything else shakes, that comes from one place: perception. You want power? Start there. Control how you see, and no one can control you. You don't need more hustle, more hype, more motivation. You need stillness, more space between trigger and reaction, more awareness of your stories, and more mastery of perception. So the question now is simple. Will you train your perception, or let it train you? If you're ready to lead your mind instead of being led by it, then subscribe. This channel is your space for mental clarity, inner stillness, and real strength.